Well, I'm really excited about this, and we've been looking forward to this date now for months, Marguerite, and be able to interview you about your new book. And I read your book, and I'm actually have it right here. And so I'm personally a consumer of this book, and so I have a lot of things that I want to ask you about it, and I'm eager to hear it right from you. So before we get started, I want to say a little bit about Marguerite, about your background and who you are, because a lot of the people, like I know on my list, who I'm going to be sharing this with, may not know you. So I'm going to say that. So Marguerite Rigoglioso is the foremost authority on the history of virgin birth. Now that's a subject very few people study. So, so it's
You
really a
know, I'm
unique topic.
probably the only authority.
Yeah,
Maybe
the
aside
foremost
from,
and only authority. Okay,
but you can claim it. It's a category. All right.
right, why not? Sure. And and the author of the bold new book called The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, and that's Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births. Now, Marguerite taught many graduate and undergraduate courses in the United States and Great Britain, but left academia back in 2012 to found her own Seven Sisters Mystery School. And she's been teaching about the sacred feminine and the deep feminine and a lot of the imbalances to go on with the patriarchy that we've been dealing with. And she also mentors clients on their own evolutionary spiritual path. And she also initiates women as priestesses, many of whom are my friends and I know and have had amazing experiences with her. She's also the author of The Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity and the Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece. So that's quite a lot of accomplishment. Because I've written books and I know what it takes to write a book and put it out there. So congratulations on getting all those books out there.
Thank you.
So how long did it take you to create this most recent book?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Darren, for having me and for having suggested this exchange because I had interviewed you on your book, which is really excellent and so needed in our world today about the healing. So I really appreciate you having invited me to introduce me to some other people. So in terms of how long it took me to write this new book, actually it went quickly. It really was a matter of maybe 5 months tops
Wow,
because it
amazing.
had already been gestating in my womb. I mean, it's something that I had been teaching about for years previously, and it was material that I already had when I had written my first two books, which came out of my doctoral dissertation at the California Institute of Integral Studies. So it was like a little bit in my field. And so then when I actually sat down, it flowed really, really quickly. And so I finished it right, honestly, when we started going down into lockdown and COVID in March 2020, I got my contract with Inner Traditions for it. It was sort of a miracle, like the world's going to heck in a handbasket. And I'm getting a book contract on Mother Mary's divine birth as an actual priestess practice.
Right.
So go figure, lots of wild and crazy things going on the planet right now, right?
Well, it's definitely very timely, and it just was meant to be there, obviously. That's why those things must have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah,
such an unusual,
you and I are both talking about avatars. You're
right.
talking about the avatar within in your book, and I'm talking about the avatar that Mary was by virtue of her virgin birth of her mother and the avatar she gave birth to, Jesus. And I've also been similar to you, also talking about how this really is a process that is open to all of us to go inward and give birth to our divine selves, have that
Right.
ascension or that inscension. So it really does correspond with what you're doing as well.
It really is quite like two very similar purposes that we're putting out there, just different aspects of it. So it's such a huge thing about who human beings really are. Who are we really? And what is our potential? And what is the role of each person in being able to change the world and transform themselves? It's huge
Yeah.
subjects. And
Yeah.
so I want to ask you a really big question first is this subject that you're writing about in this book, I'm going to start with a really big one and then come into more specific questions. How
Okay.
do you see this can help save the world? Like, I mean, in this crazy situation we find ourselves in on planet Earth now. I mean, anybody who looks at the news, whether it's alternative media or the traditional media, it just seems to be full of situations that are like more and more hopeless and beyond repair and going in the wrong
Right.
direction rather than the right direction on
Right.
that level. So how do you see that what you're really bringing is helpful to that as part of the solution?
That's a really great question. And I'm going to just kind of dive into the fractal of it. Everything that's going on right now is an opportunity for a spiritual initiation for those who are on that awakening path. That spiritual initiation is best assisted by what I would call the Christed Sophianic light within. In other words, us recognizing our own divinity and how we can use that in a conscious way to clear ourselves, heal ourselves, and elevate ourselves to be a higher dimensional, a higher frequency being on the path to union with the divine. Mary and Jesus came into the planet specifically with that mission to help us with that. That's what they're about. They're not about worship. They're about being models, role models for how we can do it through primarily a sacred love kind of energy and a supernal or interior light that we can radiate. The book that I have written here is telling us that through specific high-level priestess technologies involving the womb, Mary was able to come into the world from her mother as a very high elevated being, an avatar, as you might say, right? The human divine being. And then by that divine pedigree and her practice of divine birth, she was even able to bring forth an even higher being, Jesus. Specifically, as we in the timeline that we know about 2,000 years ago, to help with all of the shenanigans that were going on the planet at the time, have been going on ever since, and are going on into the future. Us understanding that these truly were divine avatar beings is important. So understanding that divine birth, therefore, is a real thing designed to bring in avatars is important to us, accepting and embracing that these were superior beings, that these were role model beings of how ascension can work in our lives. They are not above us. They are not impossible templates that we can never achieve what they did. They hold the bar high for us to get there, and in the process heal ourselves and heal our world. So their method of coming onto the planet through these divine birth technologies, it's important to understand and look at this so that we can validate who they were and what they're modeling, so we can trust them, so we can act in accordance with what they're teaching us. And also so that women can understand the fuller capacities of their womb, that divine birth is something that could be opened onto the planet again as a means of bringing in avatars from the star realms to this planet to assist us. And also that there are other mechanisms of the womb that can be cleared and utilized so that women can become the greater level healers and seers that they have always been and need to be now at this critical time. So those are some of the ways in which I think that the work that I've done here and the realities that I'm aiming to expose are relevant to us right now and very much what we need.
For people that are not that familiar with the term avatar, can you say a little more about specifically what that means?
As I see it and understand it, an avatar is a being who is considered a walking representation of the divine on earth. A higher frequency being, this being may have specific powers that seem counter-biological or super-biological, superpowers, if you will. And this being, usually has a high valence of divine energy, maybe comes from what we might call a star nation or a star system. And again, is a great assister and role model for those of us who are aiming to raise our vibration.
Right. Well, in the Harry Potter books, which are very popular, Rowling, the author, referred to the people who knew about magic and were wizards and so on as the magical people, and all the ordinary people as muggles who basically didn't believe in. So what about people that feel like they're muggles and they don't feel like they have all this supernal light or so on? Are they left out of the whole avatar thing? Is this only special beings that come from special star systems, or can ordinary people become avatars too? What do you think about that?
I think ordinary people can become avatars. And so it doesn't just take being divinely born without male sperm to get there. I think we can cultivate our avatarism within our lifetime and across our lifetimes. And it can take more than one incarnation to truly raise and raise and raise our vibration, as we see with Mother Mary. That, according to Sri Kaleshwar, an Indian saint, is what she did over many, many, many lifetimes. She perfected across lifetimes her soul frequency. A lot of us coming into this time where we knew we were going to go through the 2012 window on some level, we knew we were going to go through this crisis, can continue to advance our souls, advance our frequency, do our deep level healing through various spiritual processes. It's open to everyone. What it takes is willingness. So a muggle type person who is like steadfastly holding to the idea that there's nothing magical, there's nothing supernal, there's nothing divine, there's nothing more than 3D and, being born, making money and dying, having kids along the way, maybe, all of which in and of themselves can be elevated activities. But somebody who's just really, really clinging to the third dimensional level is not going to be interested and open to that. And that's their path in this lifetime. That's their karma. But for anybody who has a little inkling or came in with a lot of inkling that, hey, I need to be on the spiritual path, or people who have sudden awakenings. I have many, many clients, you probably do, who tell me, oh, well, I woke up in in 2017. I had my awakening, meaning that they realized there was more to reality than just the 3 dimensions, that there was a divine realm, there was a magical realm, there was an interdimensional realm where there is a whole ecology of other consciousness forms and beings who interact with us and interact with the earth plane. The people who open to that then can really accelerate with all the information and knowledge that's available through books like yours and other people's, through their own inner knowings that come upon them, through the investigations they do of, well, how was Jesus walking the planet? How was Mary walking the planet? Right? So it's open to everyone. It's just a matter of, are you interested?
Yeah. Are you interested? Very important subject. I mean, are we too distracted with all the weapons of mass distraction that our society gives us, or just be interested? Now, one of the things I saw in your book is you use the term the womb mysteries. I'm really intrigued by that. And I did read about it. So can you just say now freshly, like, what are the womb mysteries, and how can women who have wombs like really connect with that?
Yeah. One big body of teaching that has been unveiled on the planet again after much hiding has been these specific teachings about the holy womb chakra. The womb area as its own chakra, not the second chakra, but its own chakra. These teachings have been codified and written down on ancient palm leaves from India and beyond, like strips written in Telugu and other languages, and hidden away for centuries, that have many of the mechanisms, and particularly the mantras or the prayer repetitions that get recited, as well as the sacred drawings that you draw and work with to clear and activate the womb. So this is one way, this is one body of teaching of accessing these womb mysteries, the womb mysteries being these amazing, miraculous abilities of the womb to create healings, create beings, receive cosmic information, tools and techniques that can be worked with to have a tantric experience with a partner, right? All of these things constitute the womb mysteries. And we are getting more and more aware of what the womb is all about, what the magical properties are of the womb are all about, in addition to conceiving a child in the ordinary way, which is not really ordinary. It's always extraordinary, right? Giving birth, conceiving in divine ways, using divine technologies, tantrically having an exchange to create ascension energies between a couple, using womb energies to not only heal people, but send healing vibrations out into the world. So there are many, many ways that we're looking at, and many, many aspects that we're looking at when we're thinking about the womb mysteries. That's kind of a taste of it.
Well, we're certainly are aware of the microcosm and macrocosm of reality and the holographic nature of reality. Everything's interconnected. So the womb chakra, which is something within a human being, I would imagine it has something to do with sort of a cosmic, divine mother womb that is the creation power of the universe. And it's like such a tremendous power that women have by having that sacred experience within themselves. And so, basically when somebody enters into these womb mysteries, what does that do to their consciousness? I mean, how does that affect their way of seeing life?
It amplifies their whole vibration to understand that they are a walking replica of Mother Divine. Years ago, what I received is that the universe is a uterus, that the universe is a womb structure. I know that a lot of esoteric physicists and teachers have been saying it's a tube torus, but I would beg to differ and say that it's an actual uterus. It's a womb. And I think that the minute we really fully understand that we are within the structure of a womb, and that women have that little holographic representation of the womb within them, everything will change. Women will go back to being revered the way they once were, and their yonis, in other words, their whole womb structure, will be revered the way we see, for example, in Indian sculptures and things like that, where the womb is, the yoni is front and center on the altar of these temples and things like that. So it would help women connect back up with their own inner divine power, and it would help them amplify that power on the planet. It would help restore them to their rightful place as generators and healers on the planet. It would help us come back into right relationship between males and females. And, that's the beginning, I think, of what a true, fully fleshed womb realization, womb consciousness could do for us.
That's really powerful. Yeah. Some of the things we take for granted, like the fact that each one of us came through a mother's womb and went through that whole, even if the mother was thinking negative thoughts or was smoking cigarettes or whatever, still this magical thing happened and we're
Right.
here. I mean, that's so,
That's
we
right.
take that for granted, but it's so completely amazing, really.
It is. And, having gone through the Holy Womb teachings myself and having charged the mantras that are
Yeah.
associated with it over a 3-month period, I had dramatic changes in my life. Dramatic.
Well,
I
tell me
removed,
about those dramatic changes. I'd love to
well,
know.
I had a cyst dissolve from my ovary.
Oh, okay.
Um, I totally cleared my field of previous relationships. I was able to manifest a home
Mhm.
in connection with Mother Mary. That happened the week after I completed the mantra practices. I found the home after looking at 100 houses over like a year period.
Yeah.
And I find that it has opened up an unbelievable tantric capacity within me. So that's just my little old personal experience
Yeah.
working with these teachings that I can attest to. And, I've seen many things, things happen for many other people who have worked with this particular system. And I know there are other systems, and I know there are other people who are pulling through other womb teachings and womb information. I think it all goes together. We're all reconstructing parts of the elephant, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very important part of the clearing, cleansing, and healing and amplification of humanity and our planet to be able to do this womb work. It's not just a frill like, oh, maybe someday I'll get to that.
Yeah.
I was kind of like that until I had that scare with a cyst or something on my ovary that was like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was hard. And then that catapulted me into, you better resurrect those womb teachings that you kind of
Yeah.
half-heartedly took a few years ago. And I did it, and that's when it disappeared, So yeah, there's a lot of magic afoot once we start with these sound frequencies that we start generating in our body through the mantras and the visualizations that we use with the Holy Womb. And Sri Kaleshwar said that this is part of what Mary used in her lifetime as Mary in order to prepare herself for this divine conception of Jesus. So we're talking about pretty high level spiritual technology here.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I noticed in your book is that it talks about how the intensive process and disciplines and austerities Mary had to go through in order to prepare herself. I mean, she ate nothing but fruit or something like that, a super restrictive diet, and never had sexual relationships, and did like hours and hours and hours of spiritual. I mean, these are things that most modern people would not be willing or to do probably. So what can you say to people that might say like, wow, that's too much for me. I can't really live up to all these things that are in your book. Like how could I experience that type of thing?
Right. So what her practices show us is like the apex of one direction where we could go.
Yeah.
Which is conceiving a divine child in a seemingly counter-biological way without male sperm. Not everybody is feeling drawn to that, is karmically attuned with that, has a contract with that. But there are the roads that lead up to that are all beneficial. You can take any piece of that and practice it, and you don't have to practice it at the level that Mary did, but you will gain benefits from it. So, for example, having a particular type of diet, reducing the toxins that you're taking into your body through food, perhaps even eliminating meat eventually, some meats or all meats. And then eventually you might find that you are able to live quite robustly on less and less food, which of course is the breatharian path that many people have talked about over the years. Some have done, living on prana, right? So instead of having to kill animals and plants the way we have come to need to do through the devolution of our planet as the veils have become thicker, we can go back up that spiral and just say, wow, I've got vitality simply by drawing on pranic energy. It's like free energy. Pranic energy is to the body what free energy is to, a car or a mechanism that can go on, something else besides fossil fuel, right? So, and then her meditation practices. I mean, you don't have to necessarily meditate up the way she did, but you can even less time spent or less intensive types of meditations are going to bring you benefit. You'll receive them. It's kind of like doing anything like yoga. When you first get started, if you haven't really been exercising your life, you're creaky or But when I started getting into yoga, it's like it would be a blessing and a pleasure in and of itself just to do yoga that day. It stopped being a chore and it moved into being a form of rejuvenation and awakening every day. And meditation can be that way. Anything can be that way. So that's what I would say is like, you don't have to be necessarily working at Mary's level of practices. Also, because she did it for us in a way, we may not have the requirements of having to go that level because these beings, these high avatars and adepts and caves and so forth have been opening the doors for us so that we don't have to do as much work.
Yeah, I love that idea because that's something I put in my book too, is that Jesus was a prototyper. And I was giving the example that's like the first fish that turned into an amphibian. It somehow had to come up on the beach and find a way to breathe without gills. And it was probably really intense and difficult and this big struggle, but then it opened up the way for other creatures to live on the land. So I thought, well, Jesus was like a prototyper because he did this thing that was so against the grain of his society, that was like swimming upstream at that time to become Christed at that time when people around them were just into brute survival kind of stuff. And then, and so the Christian church would say he died for our sins, but I personally don't believe that. I would say he prototyped a way that other people can follow to be Christed much more easily than what he did. So that sounds like you're saying something similar, what Mary created a pathway that other people can follow much more without having to do it as much privation as she did.
That's right. And also love is freely given, and you could become instantly enlightened through being in a high state of love, a high frequency of love, without all those practices. Now, you may or may not be able to sustain it. The practices help you to sustain, and that's the idea, to walk in the love, the Christed Sophianic love more and more and more. But you can dip in and out of it, and that's really kind of fun to do. Like, okay, today I'm going to see how high of a vibration of love can I generate in my body, and just let it be a fun thing. It doesn't have to be a work thing. It will be its own self-rewarding process, because we all feel better when we get into that love vibration, right? And then there are other things that can assist us, like cacao. Cacao is a plant spirit food, drink that you can use to get precisely into that love vibration. So then you can remember it when you're not drinking cacao and get back into it again. So it's like a calisthenic. We go in and out, we can go in and out of it, but it doesn't have to be about privation. It can be about ecstatic communion.
Right. Well, thank God that there's people like Mary and Jesus and Mary Magdalene, all these people that did prototype it to show, we're the pioneers in a sense for us to be able to.
They're like, they were the ones who were doing heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And we thank them for that. And so now in this post 2012 window, we all have an opportunity for really rapid growth. And with this crisis that's upon us, we do. So we're all moving through that as best we can by, making our way and sharing this kind of information with each other and having ceremonies and doing the best we can to do our healing and do our elevation.
Yeah, totally. I know that you initiate a lot of women into this kind of work through your Seven Sisters Mystery School. So you want to say a little bit about that? I mean, what do you offer to people to help them with this?
Yeah. Various ongoing on-demand courses and new
Yeah.
things that are coming up all the time. I mean, I just related to what we're saying, I do have the Holy Womb Chakra teachings, which I've been
Oh,
certified to teach from Sri Kaleshwar's lineage. I have the Mother Mary mystery teachings, which incorporate some of the material from my book, plus other material from a second book that will be coming out on Mother Mary, who she was, is, and shall be, and who we shall be and are in relation to her. Other related courses, and another training I have is the Priestess of the Dove Oracle training to help people, especially women, open their oracle abilities. What some call channeling, but I call it being an oracle, which really means embodying the Holy Woman, who
okay.
is the seer, the knower, and the transmitter of information and energy from truly high dimensional perspectives and other things. And I work one-on-one with people. We have sessions. I help them clear, heal, go deeper, understand their experiences, develop their own capacity. So many things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I should also add that if people want to have more of a connection with Mother Mary on a monthly basis, I do have an ongoing monthly Mother Mary Love and Empowerment Circle that is very inexpensive. It's the third Thursday of every month, and you can go to sevensistersmysteryschool.com to see this listed among some of the other things I've mentioned. And we go through a purification and amplification meditation each month with her as inspiration. And then I serve as an oracle on questions, but we have the practice of clearing and cleansing our field and raising our vibration through information that's coming to me right in the moment. And each month it's different. So that's a really nice place where people can just relax into it. Like they don't have to create it themselves. It's set up, and they can have this experience of Mary working their energy body, working their physical body.
It's really a lot of great services.
Thank you.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about is this subject that's called the patriarchy. And you certainly refer to it in your book. And I personally believe it's at the root of most of these major crises we have on the planet now is patriarchy. It's basically this thing of massive amount of control going to the disconnected male aspect of humanity in the form of mostly, men, but even in the male aspect within a lot of women, that is just disconnected from like loving the earth and valuing the harmony and ecology of things, and going for these ambitions which create so much pollution on physical levels and psychic levels, and it has created this thing where this massive amount of power is concentrated in the hands of this very manipulative elite of people, and it seems like they're in their end game of trying to take control over humanity in many ways that most people don't even realize. So I mean, this whole thing is so acute. And so what can you say about, first of all, how did the patriarchy get so in control and push this feminine wisdom back, and what's the solution to it really? I mean, I know
Right.
I know individual women can go and plug into this and have a more beautiful experience, but I mean, since we're kind of like almost like on a countdown to how quickly we can save the planet before we go too far into destruction,
Right.
there's a time element too. So how can you see, I guess first of all, how it got to this point of the patriarchy, and what do you feel this highest solution is? I know it's
Well,
a big thing to throw at you, but
I know, and I will answer that. It's such a great question. I see patriarchy as the symptom of manipulation by interdimensional beings onto the earth plane, who have infiltrated into primarily the male principle to distort it. It is not caused by men. It is not a function of masculinity. It is a function of negative energy being set upon humanity, primarily through the male energy channels, because the beings perpetrating it were mostly male valenced in their dimensions. Okay. That's what I've come to conclude is the cause of patriarchy. And as these beings and energies wended their way into many things. They had to systematically put a wedge in and or destroy various things. One, they had to put a wedge into male, female, healthy and happy relating. They had to create misery programs, fighting, and all of this. They had to create sexual abduction, misery, and abuse. They had to destroy forests that had where trees were having divine conduits between the divine and the earth plane. They had to destroy peoples that were automatically connected to the divine. We would say indigenous peoples, even generations previous to the ones we have even been aware of from 500 years ago, etc. These are some of the places that they got in. And then they started developing up new things and new ways. So they created new types of institutions and the whole money thing, and they created enslavement in every single institution that they started building up by controlling the human population. So, and yes, I think there are beings, human beings, who are sort of really truly in cahoots with these beings.
Right.
They are kind of the puppeteers at the top, and everybody else is sort of generally unwittingly filtering into that system and programmed and harvested. Okay. And the system has been skewed toward benefiting the masculine energy, because one of the major things they had to decimate, denigrate, cover over, diminish was the womb energy and the feminine. So that's been part of the whole plan and agenda. And then they've gotten into the skin of certain human males intergenerationally. And this whole dismissal and wounding of the feminine has continued on and on and on over a number of millennia, right? So that's kind of how I see the process has gone. So it's not all of us, males, females, any gender orientation, we need to like wake up like, holy crap, that happened. Oh my gosh, am I being used in any way by this? And then do the clearing and cleansing of that, right? Which a lot of people are doing. But it's not about blaming any one gender or anything like that, right? It's about acknowledging that, wow, we've been like under attack here. Okay, we've got to grab the power back on planet Earth, and we are all, many of us are awakening in that regard. We're saying, hey, I'm sick of being intergenerationally traumatized and wounded. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to get some of Darren's processes in his book. I need to work with this therapist, that one, that one, that one. I need to elevate myself through these spiritual principles. I need to work with this set of teachings, the Holy Womb Chakra teachings, this, that, and the other thing. I need to come together with like-minded people. I need to not be available to all the programming the fear programming that's going on right now, and just stick to my process of co-creating the new earth with like-minded people, being in communication with nature and the subtle beings of that realm who are our allies, sometimes known as the fairies, etc. Okay, so all of this, these are all ways, and don't underestimate the power of your own meditation cushion or your own wound healing, etc. Okay, because that's where you have the point of control. And then from there, you can send out your energies and join, with these other groups in formations, in activisms, and so forth and so on. But it really does start from within. And that's, if you do nothing else, that's a very powerful process, because even working your own energy sends out a tremendous tsunami into the astral plane and the earth plane that you should not underestimate.
Wow, that's really
because
powerful.
That's how we are all awakening, Darren, you, me, and it's through the tsunami that's been set out by those before us who did the heavy lifting.
And those of us now who are taking brave and courageous steps.
That's right. Many of us are still doing quite a bit of heavy lifting in this regard. Voicing what's going on, trying to stick with our path, not consenting to certain things, etc.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So, I mean, what advice would you have for people that are hearing this message and feel like they relate to it, but maybe feel a little afraid or overwhelmed by what's going on, and maybe don't have the confidence that they can actually be like an avatar or do these kind of things we're talking about? What would you say to people like that?
Well, I would say, gosh, there's so much available now online. Okay.
Yeah.
As negative as online is, there's 50% of it that's of the light. You can find your free teachings, your teachers, just follow your nose, follow topics that you're interested in, Google them, search them on whatever media platforms you're looking at. Ask spirit, sit and ask spirit to guide you. You will be led. Synchronicities will happen. You'll all of a sudden, I can't tell you how many people are like, I was searching for tiddlywinks and all of a sudden I saw your website, and they're like, this
Yeah.
was my answer to my entire prayer for 10 years, So it's like things like, trust spirit, trust that when you communicate with your higher self, with your divine self, the universe will respond. Okay. Find what intrigues you, go down those roads, read those things, look at those videos, do those practices. You will be led. It's basically that simple. And, many people who will be hearing this are already in varying ways of learning. Some are also teachers, right? So they've moved into the zone of being a teacher of these things, and they're doing what's inspiring them, what they think is going to be helpful to others. So just follow your inner calling and let the magic happen, and be in communication every day with divine spirit, and then notice, watch, and meet the universe halfway through your actions.
Yeah, wonderful. That's very clear. Now, here's one topic that's really controversial now. I don't know if you have anything to say about it, but the Supreme Court is now about to remove the rights of women to, or at least greatly restrict the rights of women to have abortions. And it's such a hot topic in this country because on one hand, women say, this is my body. I have the right to do what I want to do with it, and the government can't tell me. And then people who are religious people say, well, you don't have the right to take the life of that unborn, fetus. And I mean, does Mother Mary or any of these teachings have any kind of wisdom that could be shone on this, or is that just off topic too much?
So when I tune into Mother Mary about this, what I receive is that this is precisely why we want to know about the womb mysteries. Because if we fully knew about the womb mysteries, we would never get to a place of having an unwanted conception. So it's not about the right to abortion, not abortion, because look at what abortion is. Abortion is a woman who didn't know how to govern and regulate her womb, got pregnant, and now is using the only thing that Western medicine knows how to do, which is to suck the baby out of its body. None of that has anything to do with the womb mysteries and women's empowerment. Women's empowerment is knowing what even some of these simple things are in many indigenous cultures, where they know how to get pregnant, they know how to not get pregnant. Through their consciousness, through use of plants, through different things that go into and come out of the womb at different times and so forth. So it's like the whole thing is whacked out, that we're even at this point, and that everyone's fighting for, I want to be able to pull this baby out of my body. No, you can't. This is a sacred being. Well, they're both right. It is a sacred being, and the woman needs to have control over her body, but neither is coming from the perspective that's helpful, because everybody is still in patriarchy about it. That's why we need to know the varying levels of how far this womb knowledge can go. We will then not be in a situation like this at all. So rather than fighting for or against abortion, how about focusing you and your daughter's understanding on the Holy Womb Chakra practices, all the other teachings of womb mysteries that people are doing, going into sacred medicine realms and receiving information about how do you become pregnant and unpregnant in a really clear way on the astral plane, etc. right?
Well, maybe that
That's
should
what
be
I'm
taught
getting
in
from,
high school health classes to people.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting from Mother Mary right now.
beautiful. Okay. It's all about consciousness, all about awakening and empowerment. And I guess, yeah, just that whole topic of abortion has to do with people being in a more unconscious state, both the men and the women,
That's right.
and not being as much in choice and being so much of the patriarchy and so much of the,
Yeah,
the imbalances of power, empowerment. There's so much that goes into it. But what
that's
you're
right.
saying is really the more enlightened way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm getting from Mother Mary is there is no need for one unwanted conception to ever happen. And that's the
Wow.
common pedestrian version of divine birth. So like if you start understanding these practices, it can affect you just on your regular old sexual relating with a man. Because you'll be like, okay, I know how to do this and not do this. I mean, there are people I remember in my ethnographic and anthropological studies where, and I don't know if it's Melanesia or who the practitioner was who went out there and did research, but they were like laughed. They don't believe that conception comes from male sperm and egg coming together. I mean, it was really interesting, and therefore their pregnancies went according to that. I mean, it corresponded with their beliefs or their understanding of what was really going on. So we are so entrenched in thinking that conception happens when sperm and egg come together that there's no way you're ever going to get out of that unless you think differently. And then you can start working with your womb differently. So I think these are yet more parts of the unknown, still yet hidden womb mystery teachings that have to come forth.
Right. And things are happening on many levels. That's truer level. And then in many cases, you know, that would put all the burden on women in order to solve it and leave men not having any responsibility, which is probably not fair either, especially people that haven't had these teachings. So the whole thing is, I guess we all have to, just like look into our hearts and feel what is real beyond all the sensational headlines and
That's right.
controversies.
That's right. Because everything right now is just designed to foment strife because strife is a food
Right.
for certain beings.
Yes, right.
So
Loosh.
the more strife and division, yeah, that can be fomented, the more these beings are feasting.
Yeah. Well, that's really the bigger picture. And I totally agree with you on that, Marguerite, that and it's very interesting that when I wrote my book, I had a whole chapter about these higher dimensional beings who were infiltrating through the cabal on Earth. And when I sent it out for review, a lot of the early reviewers of my book said, take that chapter out. I would never buy the book if it had that chapter in there. You're going to ruin the book is such a high vibration. Why would you want to bring it down with all that dark, scary stuff? So they had convinced me to take that chapter out. So I'll just put it on my website instead, but it's vital information.
It is. And there might be additions coming up in years where you feel like, yes, it's right to include this, but
Yeah.
maybe it was better not to have that right in there right then.
Yeah. So we've dealt some pretty big subjects here during this time, and we're getting near the end of our time. And I just want to say, what else would you want to share with people about your book and about your teachings, and that you really want people to take away from this, hearing this interview?
That you are empowered.
Yeah.
That let this be a playground of exploration for you, this earth walk, even now, in a time that feels challenging. Keep exploring, keep playing, keep experimenting with your own mind, body, spirit, whether it's regarding your womb mysteries or explorations of bringing in a divine child, or whether it's working with your health, whether it's working with your heart, whether it's opening your consciousness to higher and higher dimensional information, whatever, or a combination of all of these. Just keep exploring, just keep playing, let yourself open and experiment. That would be it.
Thank you. Wow, this has been great. Thank you for coming on, being willing to answer these questions today.
Thank you, Darren.
So if people want to reach you, your website is seven with spelled out SEVEN, sisters with an S at the end, mysteryschool.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Seven Sisters Mystery School. And so anybody who's interested in Marguerite's work, I mean, she listed before all these wonderful services she does. And what if somebody wants to ask you a question? How could they reach you or communicate with you?
The best way is to send it to our school's email, which is dove, like the bird, DOVE,
Okay.
at seven sisters offerings.com. So the seven is written out SEVEN, sisters with an S on the end, and offerings with an S on the end.
Okay.
Dove at seven sisters offerings.com. And then somebody from my team will be able to respond and either get the information to me or get the information to you, whatever needs to happen. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, to all the people who are listening to this, men and women, there's tremendous value here and very powerful teachings, which have not been spoken about in very many places. So I'm glad you're the foremost expert, even if you're the only expert in the subject. So thanks for putting it out there.
Thanks, Darren. And I really appreciate you. And since this is going to be seen by my folks as well, how can people find out more about you?
Well, thank you about that. Yes. Well, there's a web page. Well, my main website is drstarwynn.com. That would be DRSTARWYNN.com. Then if you put /practices, then there's a whole web page about my new book, Awakening the Avatar Within. And I created a complete free course for anybody who buys the book. Like the course is worth way more than the book because I spent months and months on it with videos and audio. So if you just buy the book, you can go to drstarwynn.com /practices and get that free course. So you can listen to the audios and videos. So that's just, there's so much more, but that's what I'll just say for now.
Yeah, and I highly recommend your book, your teachings, and your healing work as well, because I've worked with you as a healer too. So when I was in California, so that's just, something that is very valuable for people.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, well, anyway, have a wonderful weekend and holiday, and to you and to everybody who's listening to this. And this has been a great way to start this Friday, so thank you.
Yeah, blessed be. And yeah, thank you so much. All right, take care now.
Okay, bye, Marguerite.